bloodstream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, let's begin with the Caravan, because this thing has really gotten out of hand. First off, you need to recall that this phenomenon, as you would, has been going on since 2008. This is not the first Caravan, and it's not far from the last. This has been going on since the year that Barack Obama was elected. So it even predates his presidency. Now, the current group, which is getting all the attention, is still a little bit less than 1,000 miles from the U.S. border in Mexico. Mexico has offered them. Well, let's back up. How did they get into Mexico? They actually came to the Mexican border with Guatemala and violated that border. So they entered Mexico illegally and did so with force. Actually, they had some of the women and children tear down a border fence, if you believe that. There were no women or children involved. Amazing how we keep representing these people as a bunch of women and children seeking asylum, when every time something happens, all you see are young, able-bodied men doing things very physical, things that you would not expect a woman or a child to be able to do easily, if at all. So they violated Mexican sovereignty, coming out of Guatemala into Mexico. Once they were in Mexico, and it's interesting to see the whole debacle of Mexico. They actually, because Trump was pressing on them, they put up a show of force to keep them out, but there's plenty of video showing how the Mexican police abandoned those ports, those stoppage, those blockages, those blockades, and simply allowed the migrants, the illegals, to come into their country, which is a bit out of character for Mexico. But you have to understand what this is all about to understand why Mexico is going along. So again, they violated Mexican sovereignty. Once they had violated Mexican sovereignty, the president of Mexico actually made them an asylum offer, provided they stay in, I believe, the two most southern states of Mexico, one of them being Oaxaca. The offer was for shelter, for education for the children, medical attention, jobs. And they said, No, thank you. We're going to the United States. So if the idea was asylum because you were so concerned about what was going to happen to you in your country, you had already left your country. You were in a country where you could apply for asylum, because you can only apply for asylum, per se, once you get to a country that is the one that you're not afraid of, which is normally your own. You're afraid of being in your own country. They didn't go for that. This is starting to get... This is really starting to get very interesting here. Now, getting out of there, you also have the constant news reports, and you find out this within the past few days that a U.S. Senate candidate in Texas, Beto O'Rourke, the Democrat, naturally, his campaign is actually sending money to support the illegal immigrants in the migrant caravan, which is illegal. And he can't deny it. He's trying to characterize, well, you know, we may have bought some diapers and some baby stuff, and dude, if you bought them a toothpick, it's still illegal. What are you doing taking campaign funds and diverting them to benefit those who seek to violate U.S. federal law? How does that work? Well, you have to be a Democrat for that to work. And Beto O'Rourke is a lot of things, and particularly that. You do recognize how... But of course, people think Beto O'Rourke is going to win in Texas, and you have various people on both sides of the quote-unquote political aisle, meaning in both parties, saying the polls may not be right about this because the polls do not show him winning. They show Ted Cruz keeping his Senate seat, but there's going to be an upset. Do you really think that the people of Texas are interested in having someone as a senator who is going to help illegal immigrants enter the country with financial support while they're not in the country? Wow. Now, why is all this going on? Remember, this has been going on since 2008. We had the last one, I think it was in May, before this one. This is all to keep up the assault on U.S. sovereignty. Globalists do not want U.S. sovereignty to remain. They have compromised sovereignty throughout much of Western Europe. Germany? Please. France? Come on. I mean, a terror attack in France has almost become a byword. Italy is starting to stand up. They're not going for the okie doke anymore. Eastern Europe basically told the EU what they could do with their migrations of Islamic, primarily, migrants from northern Africa. And no, we're not letting them in here. Why? Because now if you want to go and see what they've done to the Nordic countries, sovereignty of countries from which the migrants do not originate, otherwise they wouldn't be migrants. Sovereignty is questionable. It's been compromised. And the assault on women in the countries that accept these people has been phenomenal. If you remember Germany in 2015, the sexual assaults were off the chain. In the Nordic countries, they've taken to having women wear bracelets or bands of a type that are supposed to let the Islamic migrants know that they should not be raped. If you see the bracelet, you should not rape them. I'm sure that's working fabulously. Not. So you're attacking, just like you've attacked sovereignty of other nations around the world. And let's not talk about Britain, because they have been corrupted, co-opted. Now they want to make sure they bring that here, and they're doing it by sending wave after wave of persons who are going to make a mockery of U.S. immigration law. Let's make sure we understand this. Everyone talks about comprehensive immigration reform. No, we don't need comprehensive immigration reform. We never did. What we need is comprehensive immigration enforcement. You did not get that under Barack Obama. Well, Barack Obama deported more people than anybody else. That is correct. Now, his idea of a deportation was simply not letting you across the border in the first place, or letting you put one foot in the United States and then taking that foot and shoving it right back out with you back into Mexico. That was what he called a deportation. But Barack Obama, his goal was never to uphold immigration law. It was to make the case that it was a mess because he refused to enforce it, therefore demanding something else be done that was going to be even more detrimental to the United States than the non-enforcement of law was. It's pretty simple. Also, this is to keep up the attack on U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens are being harmed by illegal immigrants who come into this country, commit crimes, and are basically not held accountable. And by holding them accountable, I mean, look, we have people who have been deported 5, 10, 15 times, ending up in this country after these deportations and committing crimes that alter the lives of Americans, if not ending them altogether. But the Democrats don't care about that. What they want to talk about is, well, you're separating children from their parents at the border, and then likening that to what happened in Nazi Germany. Well, that's not what happened in Nazi Germany. They separated children from their parents in Nazi Germany to kill those children. We're not trying to kill anybody. We're trying to make sure that the people who are coming in aren't going to be trying to kill us. Very much different. Very much different. The other thing, the greatest attack of all these migrants and all these pictures and all these sob stories, and that's what they are, sob stories, it's an attack on the consciences of those Americans who are uninformed. They just want you to feel bad because and you don't know enough by your own choice. You do not inform yourself to know when you're being lied to. And that's an unfortunate instance. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, back on the 23rd of October, made a statement regarding the Caravan and the U.S. intentions with regard to them. I thought it was fascinating. Give a listen.
The migrant caravan is violating Mexico's sovereignty, laws, and immigration procedures. President Trump will not stand for this to happen to the United States. To those who say this is a hard-hearted stance, let's not forget that the United States is a historically generous nation when it comes to immigration. Where 1 million people per year are granted permanent legal status here in the United States. Over 33 million people total are currently here who have immigrated to this country legally. To those who want to come here legally. Legal immigration is the surest way to obtain the better life you're looking for here in the United States of America. From a security standpoint, there is no proper accounting of who these individuals in the caravan are, and this poses an unacceptable security risk to the United States. Moreover, many of these people are ripe targets for human traffickers and others who would exploit them. We don't want that to happen. I've spoken twice in the last 2 days to my counterpart, Foreign Secretary Videgaray. We trust that Mexico's leaders know what the best steps are to resolve this situation, and we urge timely action on their part. The United States also has a message for those who are currently part of this caravan or any caravan which follows. You will not be successful at getting into the United States illegally, no matter what. I repeat, the caravan will not cross our southern border illegally under any circumstances. If you seek to come here, go through the normal refugee process. If you apply for refugee status, a permanent solution is possible in Mexico or in a third country. But I can tell you with certainty, we are determined that illegal entry into the United States from this caravan will not be possible.
Two major points I wanted you to take away from that. 33 million, which would be more than 10% of the U.S. population, is in this country as citizens and residents from legal immigration. So the idea that Trump is going to close the border and not allow anybody in, well, he never said that. And the Secretary of State didn't say that then. He said, come legally. The other thing that is even more important that he brought up is this thing called refugee. Now, according to the law, and this is from a immigrationlawfreeadvice.com, asylum status and refugee status are terms often used interchangeably in immigration law. Why is that? But for those applying for asylum or refugee status, the distinction is crucial. Why is that? The difference turns on where the person is located when making the application. Both asylees and refugees are considered persons who are subject to persecution because of their race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. Additionally, to qualify for either asylum or refugee status, you must demonstrate that your fear of persecution is well-founded. Consequently, both types involve applying for humanitarian relief with the U.S. government. But here is the difference. If you're an asylee, you have to be in the United States and apply within 1 year of arrival. If you're a refugee, you can apply for refugee status at any U.S. consulate. You can apply for refugee status from a third country. In short, the Caravan, if they wanted to, could have applied for refugee status and still can apply for refugee status in Mexico. Wow. Oh, by the way, if you apply for refugee status, you must apply with an agency like an embassy. They'll help you with the paperwork. And if approved, if your application is approved, they will help relocate you to the United States. And you are authorized to work in the United States once your application is approved. Why are we not hearing about this? Why is no one not beating the drum and saying we will not take asylees, but we will consider refugees? Stop where you are. Go to a consulate and apply for status. And by the way, there is another caravan that is forming. Because like I said, this has been going on for a while. They're on their way. They're coming here. And nobody is deciding to, before you leave your country, why don't you go to the U.S. consulate and apply for refugee status? Or if you're really afraid of being in your own country, why don't you cross the border into Mexico? Because a number of those in the latest caravan, not the one that's getting all the attention, but the one that has followed, they've actually legally entered Mexico. They could apply for refugee status right where they are. They could be working, living in Mexico, and then receive word on their refugee application to get to the United States. And if it's approved, the U.S. will help relocate them into this country, and they would be approved for work. Why are we not hearing about this? If you can't figure out that the left hates this country, if you can't figure out that they want to say everything that they can to say something negative about this country, it's not even about the president. They're not after the president. They're after you. They want you to think of yourself as something different than what you are as Americans. Now, you can help them out by not being informed, but for every time you hear caravan, you should be shouting refugee. Take up Mexico on their asylum offer and apply for refugee status. You're not going to hear that in the press, because the press lies. It's more than being fake news. They lie. You're not going to hear this from all the progressive pundits on television and on the radio, because they have the same globalist, anti-American objective as the people who are funding this nonsense, including Beto O'Rourke, Senate candidate in Texas. Oh, by the way, he's a member of Congress. The Caravan thing is out of hand because it never should have been a thing in the first place. Donald Trump is shutting it down in favor of regular order on immigration process and procedure. The left can't stand that, not because they're concerned about the people that are outside the United States. They are concerned about the people inside the United States waking up and seeing what they're about. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1, FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida, Talk Radio, Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. So this segment I'm going to start with a question. Why are you still looking at the polls? I'm just curious. Back in 2016, for example, Huffington Post said that Hillary Clinton had a 98% chance, 98.1% chance actually, of winning the White House, which only left 1.9 or less than 2% for Trump. And, well, you see what happened. Then there were things like this. Bloomberg actually went out and predicted that there would be a Hillary Clinton landslide.
So we've just seen live pictures of President Obama campaigning for Hillary Clinton in Ohio. Now, Moody's says the president's high approval ratings are one of the factors that will put Hillary Clinton into the White House. The Moody's model is predicting that Hillary Clinton will take the key swing states of Florida, Ohio, Colorado, and Pennsylvania. We showed you them earlier in the program. And they've correctly predicted the winner of every presidential contest since 1980. Heather Long is here. Heather, is Moody's suggesting that, upon what basis is the Moody's survey done?
Right. So it's not like a traditional poll of polls that we keep focusing on at CNN and other outlets. It's an economic model at the end of the day. So they're looking at things like, is gas cheap? How's the middle class incomes doing? How are those home prices in the United States? And as we know, a lot of those economic factors have been getting better and better over the last 2 years. People's pocketbooks are better. Are they great? You can have an argument about that, but they're certainly better off than they were.
Right. And what does the Moody's study or model suggest?
Well, it's very good news if you're in the Hillary Clinton camp. So not only are they forecasting a Hillary Clinton win, they're forecasting a pretty big blowout. They actually go state by state and look at these economic variables, and they're showing 332 electoral votes for Clinton and only 206 for Trump. So that's a pretty big win in the Clinton camp.
But, I mean, for Moody's to be doing this in a highly controversial election, if they are wrong, it's egg on their face. But at the same time, it could become not quite a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it is unusual.
It's a very risky proposition this year, and you're right that they have a big caveat on their report that came out today that says this is a very unusual, interesting, whatever adjective you want to use, year, and that the usual metrics might not apply. However, as you said, they've predicted everyone right since 1980, and not just the winner, but they've actually predicted the vast majority of the states correctly, and not a lot of models can say that.
Now, you're being fickle with me, Ms. Long, because yesterday on this program you had a survey that promised me that Donald Trump was going to win by looking at a 2% fall in the S&P 500 since August.
That's right, Richard. Good point. So we've got two different metrics telling us different things. The stock market, based on that test we looked at yesterday, it's been a 2% drop in the market since August 1st. That points towards a Trump win. But this economic model and the improving economy in the United States, that's a good sign for the Democrats and for Hillary Clinton. Which one comes out on top, we'll know in a week.
So Moody's predicted an electoral landslide, effectively, for Hillary Clinton, and they were wrong. talking about an improving economy. Of course, the last year of Barack Obama, the economy grew at a rate of less than 2%. So I'm not exactly sure what the improvement was, and his last year, 2016, was lower growth than the year before that. So again, I'm not exactly sure where the economic model was going there. And then there was the 2% drop in the stock market, which is moving in another direction. The stock market has been liable for more than a little bit right now. It's just it's not a great indicator of anything. But and that report was from CNN. That was a week before the election. They were still trying to figure it out, but somebody was stepping out there saying Hillary was going to win. 538.com was out there saying that Clinton was going to win. There was an 81% chance versus 19%. And then in September of 2016, so we're talking about a full 2 months before the election almost, Fox News had this report on Clinton and her election chances.
If you look at some media outlets, this election is practically over. The next 10 weeks I can just go on a cruise or take a lot of naps. Look at Politico. Here's two headlines on the same day. Politico, Clinton's advisors tell her to prep for a landslide. This is, of course, all quoting Hillary Clinton's strategists and allies, reflecting a level of confidence in Clinton's inner circle that she has many ways to get to the magic 270 electoral votes. Same day, Politico, inside Trump Tower, facing grim reality. And it says Donald Trump's campaign is teetering, threatening to collapse under the weight of a candidate whose personality outweighs his political skill. Okay, the last time I checked, the race was tightening according to the polls. And by the way, we spend too much time obsessing about every single poll. This is the addiction of the news business. Sometimes I may even fall under its spell. But if you look at where the race was 3-4 weeks ago when Hillary Clinton had a 10-point lead and there was a widespread expectation in the media that she's going to win this thing, now, depending on what polls you look at, Fox News poll, for example, in a four-way race, including the third and fourth party candidates, Clinton's lead is margin of error, 2 points. If it's just head-to-head, then it's 6 points, but that's down from 10 in early August. Other polls showing something similar. Now, I could go through all the swing state polls, Florida, Pennsylvania, which the Trump campaign had hoped to put into play, Ohio, Iowa, New Hampshire, and show you that in most of those Hillary Clinton has a lead, but she doesn't have an overwhelming lead. There's a gap that could be closed. At the same time, she is putting into play, at least making competitive, some states like Colorado and Nevada and North Carolina that had been reliably Republican in the past. At least she can make Donald Trump spend time and resources there. But this whole effort to decide in advance that the election's over when we haven't even had any of the debates just strikes me as a little bit crazy. And you see it in much more subtle form. In a number of media outlets which are running stories on, if Hillary Clinton wins the election, who will be in her cabinet? Or if Hillary Clinton wins the election, could she be undermined if the Trump forces and Trump allies say that the election was rigged? Or if Hillary Clinton wins the election, given that she's been endorsed by a number of high-profile former Bush administration officials and seems to be reaching out to Republicans in some of her rhetoric, is she boxing herself in where she will govern more closer to the center rather than on the left? Now, they're all interesting questions to explore, but let's not lose sight of the fact that Donald Trump could still win this election. Is he favored at the moment? No. But when you have somebody who is down by 3, 4, 5 points in the very beginning of September versus somebody who was down 10, 11, 12 points in the beginning of August, that shows you the race is tightening. And by the way, the race was always going to tighten. There was always going to be a Trump comeback story because Hillary Clinton was not going to stay at the very high levels that she had been, and the recent revelations on new disclosures on the email and the Family Foundation are hurting her. Trump hasn't moved up much, but he also hasn't lost much of his support. And by the way, even at the numbers he's got now, that means tens of millions of Americans say they're going to vote for Donald Trump despite all of the negative coverage, despite the heavy focus on the immigration speech and all of that. All I'm saying here is, as a journalist, my job to keep an open mind. Now, if we're in mid-October and Hillary Clinton is leading in every swing state, then we should reflect that. But right now, a lot of these obituaries for the Trump campaign seem just a little bit premature.
And of course they were, but the point remains. There was if you simply relied on what you were getting from the media and from different pundits and pollsters, as Howard Kurtz said, the election is over. It was over as soon as Hillary declared, and as soon as she actually made it to the convention after cheating poor Bernie Sanders blind. She was a given. This wasn't even an election. It was a coronation. She was going to blow out Donald Trump. Who's Donald Trump? He's never held office. He's never really been a public official. What does he know? Clinton's the most qualified person to ever run for president. Of course, if that was the case, you got to explain why she didn't win in 2008, because she didn't gain any real experience from 2008 to 2016. Not to be president. Or she was Secretary of State. Do you really want to bring up Benghazi? I'm just saying. I could be wrong. I'm just saying. Because that is what people are remembering her stint as Secretary of State for. You can't say that she had a lot of accomplishments as Secretary of State. Can't say that she did anything. But we look at this stuff. This doesn't start in 2015 when the polls were all slamming against the current president, saying that he was insensitive, saying he was this, he was that, he was the other thing. You got to go back in history before most people who are under the sound of my voice would have been born. It was a shock to people that Harry Truman won re-election. The newspaper headline came out for the next day before they had counted everything. They were counting votes and determining that Truman had lost. And that was the headline. Dewey beats Truman. No, he didn't. Why are you believing these polls? One question that Mike.com asked in July of 2016, because this polling nonsense was going on. When I say nonsense, I'm saying, okay, people are coming to this conclusion or that conclusion all along, and it really didn't make sense. And they just brought up, well, does this stuff even matter?
There's a new poll every day, and they all seem to say something different.
A new National Bloomberg Politics poll that shows Hillary Clinton leading Donald Trump by double digits.
Brand new swing state poll showing that Hillary Clinton's lead is virtually gone. It shows a 10-point swing, putting Donald Trump ahead of Hillary Clinton.
Trump is in the lead. No, Trump and Clinton are tied. Wait, Hillary's in the lead? Gary Johnson is gaining support? So who's right? We took a poll to find out. Okay, so we didn't actually take a poll. But we did do some research, and the most trustworthy source for judging polls is, drumroll please, 538. In 2012, 538's Nate Silver used data to correctly forecast which way every single state would go in the general election.
We're so reasonable. Even now, don't you want to stand up and go, I am Nate Silver!
So right now, Silver aggregates and updates the accuracy of nearly every election poll as they happen. But only 6 pollsters have an A+ rating, and even their results vary. And even Silver himself totally underestimated Trump's chances last year, proving that nearly all the evidence in the world isn't enough to stop bias. Nationwide, poll response rates are lower than ever because about half the country doesn't have a landline, and it's illegal to robocall a cell phone.
When you get an illegal robocall, here's what to do. Hang up the phone.
At any rate, the closer to November we get, the more accurate the polls will get. So your best bet is to ignore the polls completely until right before the election. And until then, the media will latch on to catchy polls because they fill time and make headlines.
On a very interesting clickbaity poll that young American millennials actually prefer Darth Vader to Donald Trump.
You can find the poll to fit any narrative you want. But if you're the kind of person who focuses on individual polls, you're probably grasping at straws.
Did you see the polls where they're coming out tonight?
I've done so well in the polls. You look at the recent polling.
Polling has come out and the polls are doing very well.
According to every poll, every poll.
Maybe that's why I'm doing so well in the polls.
According to every single online poll after the debates, I've won every single debate by every single poll.
You know, a poll came out today that's through the roof.
You see the polls. I beat Hillary in many polls.
I was double teamed and I won every single poll. Had me winning. Can you believe it?
See? So whether or not you trust polls, the important thing is go to the polls in November. This is your mic check.
So even with that warning, are we still paying attention to the poll? Of course we are. Why? I don't know. And it's not so much that the polls are quote-unquote wrong. Anybody can be wrong. I think, to be honest with you, they are purposely wrong. They are intentionally wrong because they're trying to actually create a result as opposed to showing sentiment. Anybody who had ever seen Hillary Clinton in action knew that she was never a popular individual in the United States of America. She may have been popular among certain progressives in D.C., but out where the real people live, no, she really isn't. I've been known to say myself, I said, you know what, Hillary Clinton, and I said this before 2016, before I ever thought she was ever going to run, I said, you know what, Hillary Clinton couldn't be elected dog catcher in the United States in any general election. She is that unpopular. She is that bad of a human being. That was my opinion. Turns out that I was right. With the exception, she could be elected senator in New York, which is quite a damning statement about New York, but I digress. But the goal of polling, which we really shouldn't be paying that much attention to, because they are not so much that they're wrong, they're biased, and they're biased in favor of Democrats. What do I mean by that? A lot of the polls that you see, 538.com might be an exception, but they were wrong about 2016 as well. They go out and look for Democrats. They ask more Democrats than they do Republicans. It is a heavy bias toward Democrats and the people that they speak to. You heard the other thing, how polling doesn't work the same way. You want to call people up on landlines, and you know what? A significant number of people don't have landlines. I don't have a landline. And if you try to call someone on their cell and they don't want to talk to you, they can just hang up, and then you don't have a real large number of results. You know, look at some of these polling results. We talked to 1,500 people. There are 320 million plus folks in the United States. At least 125 million voted in the last election, the general election, and you talked to 1,500 people. Wow. But you know everything. They were trying to basically continue the leftist march of moving this country, or actually a globalist march of moving this country away from its basis of sovereignty. They did not want U.S. sovereignty to continue. Barack Obama had done much to undermine U.S. sovereignty. People don't want to discuss that. They want to act like his was a great administration, free of scandal. If you don't believe me, ask him. He'll tell you. That wasn't the case. But the idea was to get Hillary in there, because Hillary was even deeper in the tank than even Obama was. She is corrupt to the core. Well, it didn't work, because the American people basically said, we've seen what this was for 8 years, and we don't want to see 4 more of the same. We got out of that. But here's where we are now. Guess what? They're at it again. And this time the goal is the House of Representatives, and they're doing their best to turn that against you. You don't believe me? Don't have to. But this is what 538.com was predicting in August of this year.
We've launched our House forecast for the 2018 midterm elections. Right now, the model gives Democrats about a 3 in 4 chance of winning the majority, about 76%. Republicans have about a 1 in 4 chance of keeping control of the House. The forecast shows the House battleground as wide. At least 112 seats are rated as at least somewhat competitive by the model, meaning the model gives the favorite in those districts less than a 95% chance of winning. There's an 80% chance that the Democrats will gain anywhere from 14 to 58 seats, but 20% of the time the model expects the outcome to fall outside that range. Here's a look at each race in every district in the country. Each hexagon represents one district. If you take away the solid districts, the ones very likely to go Democratic or very likely to go Republican, you can see a bunch of races left over. Districts like Ohio 1 or Texas 7 that are very competitive. Visit 538.com/House forecast to explore the model for yourself.
I would point out just a couple of things. One, this is the same guy who said Hillary was going to win. The Republicans have had the House of Representatives, or the majority therein, for all but 4 years since 1994 midterm. They won the 1994 midterm with the Contract with America, taking both the House and Senate from Democrat hands for the first time in, I believe it was 4 decades at the time. And though the Senate has gone back and forth and now is back in Republican hands, the House, with the exception of the last 2 years of Bush and the first 2 years of Obama, has been Republican. Not to mention, for the last 9 years, Democrats have been losing seats at both the state and federal level to the tune of more than 1,000 elected offices. Now all of a sudden, though the country is doing well, and they're doing well because of a Republican president and a Republican Congress that is not necessarily helping him, but they're not hindering him as much as they tried to hinder or were reported to have hindered the last guy. Now you believe, though people are working, unemployment is historically low, you have more job openings than job seekers, all of a sudden you believe the American people are going to it's time to do something different and go back to what we had before. Because the Democrats still have no message, and they still have no great love for the American people. My point is this. If you're still paying attention to the polls instead of paying attention to what's happening in the country, or maybe even in your own neighborhood, well, you may wake up pretty surprised on November 7th if you happen to lean left. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida, Talk Radio Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, we're back, final segment of the first hour, by the way. We're back talking about that pesky economy again.
Stay focused. Talk about things that matter to people. It's the economy, stupid.
Yeah, the economy. Now, I just want to remind people of something, because the Obama administration and the then president himself, touted often his consecutive month string of job growth. But you know what? There are a lot of jobs that just didn't quite make it, particularly manufacturing sector and otherwise. Because for those who do not recall, the national concern, the national priority for the electorate, the American electorate, since the 2008 election was not health care, was not immigration, was not terrorism, was jobs. The American economy was hurting for jobs. Barack Obama did not deliver jobs, because in 2016 he was still talking about it and mocking then candidate Trump for his rather positive rhetoric about jobs being able to be brought back into the country.
When somebody says, like the person you just mentioned, who I'm not going to advertise for, that he's going to bring all these jobs back. Well, how exactly are you going to do that? What are you going to do? There's no answer to it. He just says, well, I'm going to negotiate a better deal. Well, how exactly are you going to negotiate that? What magic wand do you have? And usually the answer is he doesn't have an answer.
Or it could be he didn't want to give you any more fodder for conversation prior to the election. I don't know. However, we can say that since he's taken office, he has definitely delivered on what you did not deliver. Because had you delivered on it, you would not have needed to make any commentary during the 2016 campaign as you were on your way out the door. So you asked the question, what was he going to do? Where are these jobs coming from? Well, here we are in October 2018, and we have this answer.
Back to the jobs report now. Yes, we have him with us. Kevin Hassett, chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. He joins us from the White House. Kevin, welcome back. Good to see you again.
It's great to be back. Thanks.
No wonder you got a smile on your face.
Yeah.
Even I have characterized a 250,000 gain in jobs as good. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's really an astonishing report. You know, we did this estimate of what the hurricane effect was going to be because the hurricane came during the survey week, and we thought that it was going to subtract about 60,000 jobs from this. And so we were prepared for the worst, and this is just like an astonishing number given all of the actual literal headwinds that we had.
The hurricane had no impact at all on this job number? No?
Well, the BLS, you know, it's a highly uncertain thing, but on the household side, we had more than 190,000 households say they didn't go to work for a week because of weather, and that's one of the highest we've seen on record. And so we don't really know what the hurricane effect is, but it's astonishing to get 250 with the hurricane happening in a survey week. It's just almost unheard of. And like the details, too, that you had mentioned that it was across the board strong. You know, we had lots of job growth in all the industries. In fact, there wasn't a single industry in the data that went down. So talk about broad spread growth.
But don't miss the other bright spot, which is the 3.1% increase in wages over the past year.
Exactly.
Of course, there's some criticism this morning that is so strong it means higher interest rates from the Fed because of higher inflation. Discuss that one, please.
Oh, sure, and that's something Professor Varney and I have talked a lot about over the years, right? Because what's going to happen is that we're going to cut corporate taxes, we said last fall. That's going to lead to a capital spending boom, which we see in the data. That's going to increase productivity and wages. And so wages should go up right now because workers have better and more machines to work with it. And when that happens, you know, I respect the independence of the Fed. I don't want to give them monetary policy advice. But when that happens, then you can see wage growth that's real wage growth and not just inflation.
Kevin, flattery works wonders in television. So if you want to call me Professor...
Wait, professor's an insult. It's an insult, right? These days.
Yeah, maybe so. Tell me more about trade, please, because here's what we've got on our plate this morning. The president calls China's leader, Xi Jinping. He says they had a good conversation about a deal. We are told that the president has told his staffers to prepare a draft of a China trade deal. Can you update us on any of this?
Well, I can't comment on the presence or lack thereof of a draft. I can say that the President Xi and President Trump had a great call, that there, I think, is a lot of optimism going into the G20 meeting of what's going to happen at that meeting. And, of course, as you go into a meeting, you know, people study, you know, what are the kind of things that we're going to ask. I think another thing to notice also, and this has been covered very well in the media, is that the President has sort of marshaled all the troops of government to try to get things like IP theft to stop from China. And so not only have we done the things that have gotten the headlines with the tariffs and so on, but we've also got law enforcement involved to stop things as well. And so I think that we're going down into a negotiation with a very, very strong position.
May I ask you, if you were there when the president was talking with Xi Jinping, was Larry Kudlow there? Did you... Are you allowed in?
Sorry, we can't. I'm not allowed to talk about who's where, when. It's all executive privilege stuff.
Okay.
But you could ask the press office to help you with that. But I apologize, Stuart.
Okay, no, that's all right. That's all right. Before you go, what happens to the economy if the Democrats take the House?
I think if the Democrats took the House and then they embraced President Trump's policies and they, made them permanent, then things would go up. But if you think that that's unlikely, then probably you'd be heading in the other direction.
Kevin Hassett, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us, sir. Appreciate it. See you again soon.
Stuart.
Yes, sir.
So the last job report before the election comes out with an extremely strong number, 250,000 jobs. That's a lot of jobs. And also announcing wage growth, which was absent during the Obama administration, of 3.1% year over year. So not only has the Trump administration delivered on jobs, it's delivered on higher paying jobs as well. And how did he do it? He did it by getting rid of regulations that the prior president had put in place. Here is the interesting thing. The job growth that Donald Trump achieved was always there for Obama to achieve, but he is the one that said he wanted to strangle coal. He is the one who wanted to put the regulations in place that people were unable to work with in order to create new jobs. He could have stopped that and gotten the number. The reason why he didn't? He's a globalist, and he doesn't want the American people to succeed. It's really that simple. What about the better deal? You do know that China has been dropping their tariff levels at a ridiculous pace since Donald Trump has gone after them. He announced tariffs, China announced tariffs, but China keeps announcing reductions on cars, on other things, not only with the United States, but with other countries. So he is getting a better deal. NAFTA is being renegotiated. It's already been renegotiated with Mexico. Everything you want to say that Obama did not understand, Trump apparently did. And then he did it. We're going to bring jobs back. Manufacturing sector is doing well. Jobs were lost in the manufacturing sector under Obama. These were the jobs that he said were not coming back. But they are coming back. Manufacturing is returning to the United States. Wage growth is returning to the United States. People are not just working for a pittance. And when you have more people, you have more employers looking for workers than you have workers looking for jobs, that continues upward pressure on wages, because now you have to pay a premium to get these competed resources. Workers. This is wonderful news, but the Democrats believe that in spite of that, you want them. And as the gentleman said, if they continue with Trump's policies, then everything will be fine. If they don't, they're going to go in a different direction. The idea is the last time the Democrats had control of the House, it lasted for all of 4 years, including just the first 2 years of Barack Obama's presidency. Why? Because they were out of step with the American people. If they now shut off jobs, then that majority won't last very long. I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Ron Edwards, and after that we'll be back with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
Mexican leaders dispatched more police and military personnel on that nation's southern border that have been mostly watching 5 caravans of bully migrants heading to the United States to invade. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, there are now armed and dangerous men among those throngs pushing to illegally barge into our republic. The invaders have famous allies like Shepard Smith of Fox News, CNN's Don Lemon, who called pro-American white men terrorists. President Trump plans to enact an executive order that would end the destructive anchor baby system that allows pregnant illegal border-crossing females to drop their babies and then be dubbed U.S. citizens. And in sanctuary cities like San Francisco, where homeless Americans live in cars, while homeless illegal border crossers receive everything they want. Black Americans like Scott Bolden, former Democrat Party chairman, advocates for letting in illegal border crossers because he considers America to be racist. Apparently, Mr. Bolden isn't aware of the legendary racist tendencies of Latin and Central Americans, particularly against black people. But then again, he may not even care because his desire to harm our republic supersedes his so-called concern over racism. I'm Ron Edwards. Let's further discuss this and other issues during the Ron Edwards Experience on AmericaMatters.us, SHR Media, on Fridays 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and Sunday midnights on the TalkAmericaRadio.us network.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinkin here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. I'm just going to say this, and I know that some people be upset about it, but you know what? The nation, in my opinion, but I can definitely speak for me, but I think the nation all but disbelieves every left-leaning woman that exists. They're all liars. All of them. Every left-leaning female in the United States, and particularly those who are political, and particularly those who are white. Now, that's said, and everybody can have their moment of, oh, I don't really care. The interesting thing about this statement is I'm going to kind of nail this down or wrap it up within a 27-year window. Now, I'm not trying to say that the window is now closed, but I find it interesting that we can have bookend events for an increasing trend of lying by left-leaning females, to the point where you could make the argument that they are paid, they are lining up to be paid to say anything, even the most ridiculous, salacious, and outrageous things about a man, and they do that for a political agenda. Let me take you back to 1991. When George H.W. Bush nominated Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court. Thurgood Marshall had passed away, and Bush, in his wisdom, decided to replace one black man with another black man. However, Dead Kennedy, whom you guys would call Ted Kennedy, who had killed a woman decades before, decided to have his staffers go out and dig up dirt on Clarence Thomas, and they found a lying witch named Anita Hill, who basically called the judge every manner of sexual deviant that you can imagine in the workplace, and said all this was directed at her, despite the fact that she followed him from job to job and that she advanced as he advanced. All these things that were so disgusting to her when she talked to the Senate committee about, the Judiciary Committee about it, but didn't seem to deter her from following this man. He had made unwanted sexual advances, he had done everything, and he couldn't get shed of her. You couldn't get her off of him with dynamite. She lied. Well, you don't know. Yeah, I do. She lied. There's no proof. There was no proof of what she had said. And there was no corroboration of anything that she said. She lied. The interesting thing to me about it was when given the opportunity to respond to the charges against him, Clarence Thomas said the following.
Committee will please come to order. Judge, it's a tough day and tough night for you, I know. Let me ask, do you have anything you'd like to say before we begin? I understand that your preference is, which is totally and completely understandable, that we go 1 hour tonight, 30 minutes on each side. Am I correct in that?
That's right.
Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Senator, I would like to start by saying unequivocally, uncategorically, that I deny each and every single allegation against me today that suggested in any way that I had conversations of a sexual nature or about pornographic material with Anita Hill, that I ever attempted to date her, that I ever had any personal sexual interest in her, or that I in any way ever harassed her. A second, and I think more important point, I think that this today is a travesty. I think that it is disgusting. I think that this hearing should never occur in America. This is a case in which this sleaze, this dirt, was searched for by staffers of members of this committee, was then leaked to the media, and this committee and this body validated it and displayed it at prime time over our entire nation. How would any member on this committee, any person in this room, or any person in this country would like sleaze said about him or her in this fashion, or this dirt dredged up, and this gossip and these lies displayed in this manner? How would any person like it? The Supreme Court is not worth it. No job is worth it. I'm not here for that. I'm here for my name, my family, my life, and my integrity. I think something is dreadfully wrong with this country when any person in this free country would be subjected to this. This is not a closed room. There was an FBI investigation. This is not an opportunity to talk about difficult matters privately or in a closed environment. This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And from my standpoint, as a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves, to do for themselves, to have different ideas. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, this is what will happen to you. You will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
Clarence Thomas did not read that statement. He stared directly at the committee members and spoke. One might say from his heart, I would say from his outrage, but that's a different matter. And there was the moment when he said no job was worth it, and of course that got the Democrats all hot and bothered. He said maybe he's going to withdraw. No, he didn't withdraw. He just lets you know that I'm not here pandering for a job. You've gone after my name. You've gone after my life. You've gone after my integrity. And I'm going to stand against you for that. And the interesting thing is whenever a man stands in this country, almost whenever a prominent man decides to stand for his right as opposed to take plea deals and make compromises instead, he tends to prevail. But the one thing that is constant since that 1991 time, though it was unsuccessful in keeping Clarence Thomas off the court, it did lay a blueprint that the Democrats have used ever since. If there's ever someone that you do not want to advance, and they're going to go under any kind of public scrutiny, let us find something unsavory to say about him. Find a woman and put it out there and let's go after him until we destroy him, destroy his reputation, make him withdraw in disgrace, do anything to make him go away. It worked on Herman Cain. Herman Cain, when he ran for office, ran for the presidency in 2012, they brought out a bunch of women who disappeared as soon as he suspended his campaign. All the women kind of went away, but they showed up and had all kinds of things to say about him, half-truths at best, nothing untoward. It was all the innuendo. And let me make sure we get clear about this. All these leftist women, because I can guarantee you all the women who came out against Herman Cain were inspired and or paid by leftists. I know, it's come on, really? There was that moment there when you actually thought Herman Cain's candidacy was going to catch on and say, oh, we can't have this. Nevertheless, let's go down the list, shall we, of some things. Brian Banks, Los Angeles football star who had a scholarship offer to USC and had dreams of playing professional football, was derailed because a woman lied about him. He was innocent. He knew he was innocent, but instead of standing, as Clarence Thomas had done years earlier, he took a plea deal and gave up 5 years of his life. Eventually, the young lady who was lying like a rug recanted. But others stood up and got a better deal. The Duke lacrosse team said, no, we didn't do it. And the stripper was lying, shown to be lying, ended up killing somebody, and she's in jail right now, killing a man. Nikki Ovino lied on 2 young men because she had sex with them at a party, and there was a 3rd young man whom she wanted to have sex with, but was felt she did not have any opportunity if she thought, if he believed that she was some type of a slut, which is exactly what she is. So she lied on these 2 young men. They stood their ground, and they finally caught her, and she's now been sentenced to a year in jail, but she's not going to serve. They'll get her for time served, and she'll walk away in a few weeks. There's Virginia. You can go down the list of all the folks who have been lied about by left-leaning women. Now, the interesting thing is those who do not lean left, when they call out folks who lean to the right, or they call out left-leaning men, nothing seems to happen. Why is Bill Clinton still walking around free? Why is Keith Ellison still allowed to even seek the office of Attorney General of Minnesota? Why is that? Because both of them have credible charges of sexual assault against them, and sexual battery and domestic violence, all that, but we don't hear that. And that list of lies, list of lying females who have gone after men in power is long. And now it's gotten to the point where lower hanging fruit on the leftist male tree has gone down. You've seen the supplanting of male news figures by females because a female said something about them. You've seen politicians not named Bill Clinton go down because someone would make an allegation. It's kind of like a tap on the shoulder. We don't need you anymore. But I want you to notice something about lying women. Let's talk about Harvey Weinstein, whom I would agree is a egregious sexual predator. And all the way, oh, it was the Me Too and the Harvey. Let me help you out with something. None of these lying chicas had a word to say about Weinstein as long as he was getting them paid, or as long as they thought they were going to get an opportunity to get paid. They allowed him to abuse every orifice they had so long as they were going to be able to make a movie. It's when they found out, I'm not sure I need him anymore. All of a sudden, bravery, courage came in. Meryl Streep finally found a conscience. Miss me with this nonsense. You're a bunch of harlots. And as long as you were going to make your money or have a chance at it, you didn't care what any man did to you. And as she just, well, I didn't have sex with him, I promised him. Girl, stop lying. Save that stuff for somebody else. Maybe your husband will believe you, but nobody else is going to go deal with this. We've gone through decades, 2.5 decades, of left-leaning women telling any lie that they want, and for the most part, doing it with impunity. And that's where the problem comes in. And after 27 years, they tried it again to try to keep somebody off the Supreme Court. And once again, a man with a record and with integrity stood his ground and thwarted them. And that person was Brett M. Kavanaugh.
I've been a judge for 12 years. I have a long record of service to America and to the Constitution. I revere the Constitution. I am deeply grateful to President Trump for nominating me. He was so gracious to my family and me on the July night he announced my nomination at the White House. I thank him for his steadfast support. When I accepted the President's nomination, Ashley and I knew this process would be challenging. We never expected that it would devolve into this. Explaining this to our daughters has been about the worst experience of our lives. Ashley has been a rock. I thank God every day for Ashley and my family. We live in a country devoted to due process and the rule of law. That means taking allegations seriously. But if the mere allegation, the mere assertion of an allegation, a refuted allegation from 36 years ago, is enough to destroy a person's life and career, we will have abandoned the basic principles of fairness and due process that define our legal system and our country. I ask you to judge me by the standard that you would want applied to your father, your husband, your brother, or your son. My family and I intend no ill will toward Dr. Ford or her family. But I swear today, under oath, before the Senate and the nation, before my family and God, I am innocent of this charge.
Interesting thing to me about the differences between Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh. Clarence Thomas didn't read his statement. Brett Kavanaugh did. It was a prepared statement that he read. He was emotionally overwrought. I think a lot of it has to deal with the fact when you are a black man in America, as I am, you deal with certain slights differently. They trigger a slightly different response. More in style than in substance. At the end of the day, Brett Kavanaugh finally said, I'm innocent. Now that was the statement that Clarence Thomas led with, but the whole point is another leftist woman, in this case several. They only sent one woman, one lying chica after Clarence Thomas. They came, they were pulling him out of the woodwork, and they were obvious liars against Brett Kavanaugh. Of course, Nita Hill was an obvious liar as well, but not as obvious as Christine Blasey Ford, not as obvious as Julie Swetnick, not as obvious as the other woman who just finally came out and just admitted, I lied, I just wanted attention, and wow. What the feminists have done is they've exposed themselves, and they finally let you know what they're about. They do not care about anything other than misandry. This is misandry. This is hatred of men, to the point where they will destroy whatever a man is associated with if it will further their agenda. Not surprisingly, the nation is coming to the point where if a leftist woman says it, particularly says something about a man, they're really not giving it much attention. They're finally treating it the way it should be treated. If you got something to go with that statement, okay, we'll see what you can do. If not, I'm really not trying to hear anything you have to say. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com and WLBB, News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, what we now have going on in the South is what I call the Black Socialist Gambit. And that is the idea that there is still enough white guilt sufficient for getting two black socialists elected governor in the states of Georgia and Florida. Make no mistake, the two people who are running as Democrats, black Democrats in Florida and one in Georgia, are not going to do their states any good if elected. They cannot. Their positions are out of the mainstream. Their positions are out of benefit to citizens. We're talking about Stacey Abrams in Georgia, who is simply she's a progressive. She's a tax and spend liberal. And we also have Andrew Gillum in Florida, who is not only a tax and spend liberal, but he's an arrogant SOB who's under investigation for the FBI, by the FBI. These people have issues. Both of them have issues. Let me give you an idea of what some of these issues are. Stacey Abrams has in her mind expanding publication in the state while cutting $100 million in tax credits for students that attend private schools. And wow, stop. You're going to force these kids into schools that underperform, and to fund it, you're going to take away the money that parents are using to have their kids in a better education option. You want to increase teacher pay, and you want to extend early childhood education, but you don't say you're going to pay for that, which is typical progressive tax and spend liberal ideology. She's for, how do they say it, common sense gun control. We all know what that means. First of all, somebody else gets to infringe upon your right to own a gun based on their opinion, not yours. You have to understand what a God-given right is. A God-given right is not something that another person gets to decide whether you can exercise it. And that's what a three-day background check is. Well, she wants that. That's an infringement. There is nothing in the Constitution that says you have the right to bear arms after we've looked at you for 3 days. There's nothing that says a citizen has the right to bear arms only if we believe that they are mentally competent. Really? So how long does it take before that becomes politicized to the point where only certain people who've never made certain statements. Take a look at social media right now and how they are devising algorithms to determine who is and who is not allowed to speak and participate on their platforms. How long before you think some leftist in government adopts similar algorithms in states where common sense gun control laws are in place? Of course, she's pro-abortion, and she has found fascinating ways to talk around the fact that she owes the IRS $54,000. Let me ask you a question, Democrats. If the fact that you haven't seen Donald Trump's tax returns and nobody has alleged he's broken the law, and nobody has alleged that he owes money, if it's such a bother for you not to have seen his taxes to see how much he paid, how come it doesn't bother you that Stacey Abrams didn't pay $54,000 in taxes? It doesn't bother you. Well, you know, she had problems with her mom and her dad, and they were sick, and they were raising... Really? So, let me get this straight. Her niece, whom her parents are raising, is not being raised by the child's parents because both of those individuals have drug problems. Is that the federal government's issue? Therefore, everybody whose family members are drug-addled, you don't have to pay taxes because you may have to help them out. Is that the way it works? Oh, okay. So Donald Trump didn't pay taxes legally, and therefore he shouldn't be president. Stacey Abrams missed a $54,000 tax liability and just simply hasn't paid it, but she's qualified to be governor. I'm sure there's some logic in there. Doesn't seem to make sense to a normal person. Of course, she's pro-abortion. And I'm still waiting for someone to point out any accomplishment of hers in a state where Democrats are outnumbered by Republicans to the tune of, I believe, somewhere between 50 and 60,000 voters based on the primary turnouts. What has she done to make anyone believe that she is best for Georgia? Trump won Georgia. Trump won Georgia. What is it that she believes that is in concert with what... And Donald Trump just held a rally in Macon, Georgia recently, and the crowd was huge. What is it that Stacey Abrams agrees with regard to President Trump? Please enlighten me, because I don't know what that is. She has no message. She's like every other Democrat. It's basically, I like education, I like a woman's right to kill, I like common sense gun control, I like all these, I like Medicare for all of this stuff. That's what they want. Now, bump the fact that the American people are consistently beginning to reject all those things. And the reason why is, no, the majority of American people do not believe that health insurance is a right. They don't. They don't necessarily believe that even health care is a right. They believe it is extremely important. So is food. So is shelter. And I don't see anybody demanding a right to that the way they are trying to demand a right to health care. And now, of course, we're talking about voter suppression in Georgia and the Republican candidates being accused of this. Of course, people tend to forget that Stacey Abrams, Mr. Kemp and Ms. Abrams, have been going back and forth about voter suppression and voter fraud for at least 4 years now. It was back in 2014, the new generation or new Georgia project or something she was doing that was supposed to register new voters was brought up under allegations of voter fraud. and actually had about 50 plus cases referred to the state attorney general. And that seems to have been brushed under the rug, and now we're talking about whether or not 53,000 voter registrations are being held up by the Secretary of State. My response to that is, here's a simple thing. There are rules for what a complete and accurate and correct voter registration is supposed to be. These 53,000, do they meet that standard? If they don't, then why is he wrong to hold them up? That's all there is to it. If they don't, it doesn't matter whether or not they're 53,000 from all black people, no black people, some black people. There's no racism, because there are plenty of black people who could fill out the form properly and did. You're not getting it. Stacey Abrams is being pushed not because she is the best candidate for Georgia. She is not. She's simply a progressive and a tax and spend liberal. That is not what's good for Georgia or what's good for anyone in the country, to be honest with you. Look at the states where tax and spend liberalism holds sway. Look at California with the highest poverty rate in the country. Look at San Francisco, where you have people defecating in the streets and throwing hypodermic needles on the streets, etc. Look at New York, where people are exiting. Look at New Jersey, where people are exiting in droves to get away from those governments. You think that that's what you want in Georgia? I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. But let's talk about Florida. There you have an interesting gentleman, Andrew Gillum, a very young man. He's been the mayor of Tallahassee, which has double the poverty rate of the state of Florida and basically double the poverty rate of the nation at large. But he is somehow qualified to lead the state. Lead the state where? He opposes everything that the Florida legislature supports. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the Florida legislature, any state's legislature, is a more accurate view of what the people of the state think than one guy in the governor's office. He opposes the things that they support. How is he looking out for what's best for the people? And I love when someone actually challenged him or sought to clarify his positions on whether or not he was a progressive. And he basically doubled down.
The question is, will it work in a general election? And they're coming for you. They're already coming for you based on your message. Ron DeSantis, the Republican nominee, had a statement last night about you, Andrew Gillum. He says you want to abolish ICE. You do, correct?
We want to replace ICE with the Department of Justice, an entity that has not been tarnished in the same way as ICE has.
So again, he says you want to abolish ICE. You say you want to replace it. That's basically the same thing. He says you want $1 billion tax increase. He says you want single-payer health care system as Florida. You do want Medicare for all, correct?
I am a champion for treating health care as a right and not a privilege. That's absolutely right.
So let me get this straight. With caravan after caravan of illegal immigrants headed to this country to try to get illegal asylum instead of staying where they are, getting to a safer country that's not their own, and applying for refugee status, in the midst of that, this guy wants to abolish ICE. He wants to raise taxes. We just cut taxes, and we now have seen so much job growth that there are more job openings than there are job seekers. He wants to raise taxes. I guess he figures we have enough, so let's go ahead and raise taxes and shut all that down. He wants Medicare for all, which no one understands. Look, Stacey Abrams and Andrew Gillum are gubernatorial candidates who belong running in a race in Venezuela. They don't belong in the states of Florida and Georgia. The only reason that they are getting traction is because they're black. You can't run a white progressive in Florida for governor. You can't run a white progressive for governor in Georgia and expect them to get anything but the back of the hand. They would be pimp slapped out of the race. It would have been over as soon as the primaries were done. That's why Keisha Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, ain't running, because she wouldn't stand a snowball's chance in a statewide election. I don't know why this woman believes she does. Being in debt, 220. She has more debt than the job pays. If she devoted all of her salary to paying off her personal debt, it wouldn't make it. She'd still be in debt after a year, maybe even after 2 years. Interest and all. And Andrew Gillum is under investigation, and he's an arrogant progressive who has no regard for individual freedoms, individual rights. He has every regard for the rights that the government can bestow in terms of health care, in terms of education, in terms of, So this is the socialist gambit, the black socialist gambit in southern states. The prayer is that it is rejected. The only reason they could possibly be elected is the same reason that Barack Obama was elected. He's black. And it's time for a change. I'm just hoping that after people have seen 8 years of Barack Obama change and have now experienced 2 years of a reversal of that change with a different president, that they're not going to look at the state level and say we want to go back to what we've been rescued from. That's my hope. But the only way to find out what's going to happen is to wake up Wednesday morning and see. I am not looking for black folks in Georgia, although they could, but I'm not looking for black folks in Georgia to rescue those states, rescue that state from Stacey Abrams. I'm not looking for black folks in Florida to rescue that state from Andrew Gillum. It would be nice if they did. I'm going to make it real clear. I'm looking for non-blacks who outnumber blacks in those states to reject progressivism, to reject tax and spend liberalism, and to stay on the track with the rest of the country that is trying to make America great again. There's no sense starting on this path just to turn back because somebody has a dark paint job on their skin. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBV News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the show as we go into an election within a day. Wow. When I look back at everything that I've been talking about for a few months now, caravans and polls and the economy and the discrediting of the economy, leftist women making accusations against men, socialists now trying to take over state governments in southern states, abortion, and the rest. This all boils down to something very straightforward. This is all about what Trump has exposed simply by winning. Not because he made a pledge to go after them, but he's exposed the media, he's exposed the Democrat Party, he's exposed the Republican Party, he's exposed those in permanent governor positions in D.C., he's exposed political correctness, he's exposed race pimps. With the media, He's exposed the media with 2 words: fake news. Anyone who really pays attention to what Donald Trump is saying is this: you guys aren't fair. You're not accurate, and you don't tell the truth. And the American people know this. And they vote with their feet or with their eyeballs. CNN is hemorrhaging viewership. The New York Times is hemorrhaging readership. Americans are looking to other sources than mainstream news for information because they don't believe you. Getting upset with Donald Trump about that doesn't make a bit of sense. Stop lying. Stop looking to have nothing going on but denigration of a man that you do not know. I think if you did that, you'd probably fare much better with the American people. This is not that hard a lift if there's any journalism actually still present in the American media or press. We'll have to see. He exposed the Democrat Party. If you remember something, this happened during the campaign, during the general election campaign in particular. Donald Trump had a message. Donald Trump had a platform against which or on which he is delivering as an elected official. He said it's about jobs. He said it's about trade. He said it's about immigration. He said it's about making America great again. He is simply delivering on the things that he said he would do as a candidate. What was Hillary Clinton's campaign message? I am woman, hear me roar. What does she have to say about anything that didn't begin and end with, I'm Hillary, you should vote for me? I'm Hillary Clinton, it's my turn, I'm a woman, you already had your black president, now it's time for me. Step up and do the right thing. That was her message. And the American people, in their wisdom, looked at that message and said, it does nothing for me. Therefore, I don't support it. I don't support it because it does nothing for me. I'm not working. My family needs money. We need opportunities. And you are promising us more of what we've had for the last 8 years. An economy that never saw 3% growth. And in the last year of the administration, I think the growth level was 1.5%. It was anemic. It was pathetic. The Democrats have no message. They had no message in 2016. They continue to have no message now except the same liberal policies that have been proven to have gotten this. Let me help you out with Medicare for All. Medicare for some has more unfunded liability than the federal government has debt. That's Medicare for some. Why would I want that for everybody if I want to have a country that has any economic or financial viability whatsoever? He's also exposed the Republican Party as charlatans. We're not Democrats, wink, wink, and we will tell you everything that you want to hear so that you can understand that we're not Democrats. At the same time, all the positions that they took to hold on to a majority, to regain a majority in 2010, and hold on to that majority ever since, well, you didn't deliver on any of them. What's more, you still haven't delivered on some of the key ones that got you elected 8 years after the fact. And now that you have a president who's willing to work with you to get it done, you still haven't delivered. Obamacare, even though neutered, is still on the books. Shouldn't be. Immigration should have been solved by now, and he's given you multiple opportunities to solve it, and you've demonstrated as a Republican Party you either do not understand immigration or you don't want it solved. Personally, I think you solve it by enforcing the law. You don't want that either. So I'm not exactly sure, but I do know this. Donald Trump has found you out, and he's put you on Front Street, which is pretty much where you belong. What about the D.C. perma government, as I call it? He's exposed them as liars. He's exposed them as, well, that's the swamp. That's where James Comey was. That's where Andrew McCabe was. That's where Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were. People who have now been removed from the FBI that otherwise you would not have known about. That's where someone who was hiding out in the EPA building for 25 years doing his own brand of social justice was forced out, not because Trump ordered him to leave, but the mere presence of someone who was going to act as an American president let him know his time was up. Various Obama holdovers spontaneously left the government, either immediately or over the course of time with Donald Trump in place. Did Trump go after them? No. He simply made it clear what was and was not going to be tolerated. And now the government with inside, those who are in government inside D.C. are starting to change. That's going to be a very slow process. But I will give Trump this. He doesn't seem to have much fear of anything going on inside the Beltway. He just hits it and keeps moving. Remarkable. Just remarkable how he does it. But he's going to have to take on more. The intelligence communities outside of the FBI are also problem children. Someone's going to have to deal with all the things that WikiLeaks has exposed. Somebody's going to have to deal with all the things that Edward Snowden made known. And they don't really want to do that right now. Trust me. Political correctness is something that Donald Trump has really hit right on the button. And it has unleashed a torrent of actual free speech in America. Let me make this clear. After 8 years of Obama, you had people of quote-unquote white or non-black persuasions believing that they had no place that they could speak. They had nothing that they should say. Everything was being told what they should accept, and they should just sit back and take it. And now they have said, you know, I actually have another idea. My people never owned slaves, so I'm not going to feel guilty about slavery, that I had nothing to do with it. Let's remember something. 40% of America can trace their entry into this country, their family's entry into this country through Ellis Island. Ellis Island was not even established until after the Civil War. The slaves were already freed before they even got here. They had nothing to do with it. Even slavery at the time, you do realize that only 6% of Americans ever owned slaves, white and black. So for white people to actually have it in their minds that they needed to be ashamed of slavery as though they had, as though a majority of them had anything to do with it, they didn't. And with 40% of the country not even showing up here until after slavery was over, the basis for white guilt would be what? That is a huge issue, because until free speech includes the largest group of people in this country, those considered Caucasian or white, there's no free speech. Colin Kaepernick doesn't represent America. LeBron James doesn't represent America. Linda Sarsour doesn't represent America. The majority of Americans are descended from Europeans. They are white or considered white. How can you have free speech in a country that is more than 3/5 white when the white people are afraid to speak their minds? Well, they're racist. I don't care. And I say that with all seriousness. I don't care who's racist. I'd rather them tell me and I be able to deal with it. But see, I know that blacks are racist, and they're in denial about it. I know that certain Hispanics are racist. I live in Southern California where there are Hispanics who are actually intimidating blacks and sometimes killing them to get them out of neighborhoods. I know about this. What I don't have are whites doing the same damage to people of color that people of color are doing to themselves. That's what I don't have. We've gone after the political correctness. Donald Trump was caught on tape saying grab them by the private parts, and guess what? People had to admit, and women are willing to admit, what guys say in a locker room setting, I don't care. And Donald Trump has exposed the race pimps. There are tons of you have enough pictures to fill up a wing of the Smithsonian Institute of all the black people who now decry Donald Trump, who were all too happy to be photographed with him, to give him awards, to mug before the camera with him and his wife when he was not running for president. And Donald Trump hasn't changed. So what does that tell you? He wasn't a racist until he was a Republican. If you think Donald Trump is really a conservative Republican, wow, bless your heart. Donald Trump, at the request of the American people, has exposed what has gone wrong in America for the past 5 decades. The question now is whether or not America, after electing him, which was a big step in the right direction, have the courage to take another step in that direction and continue to have the Democrat Party lose elected office as it has since 2009. The bloodbath has been severe, but not severe enough. They're still alive. The Democrat Party needs to be eliminated now that you know what you know about them in these 2 years. My hope is that whether by ballot, whether by demonstration, whether by running a business a certain way, by any means necessary, that you choke the life out of the Democrat Party. And that's our program. God bless you. God keep you. That is always my prayer. And until next time, do take care.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.